The sounds of pleasure coming from our bedroom stopped me dead in my tracks. Through the crack in the door, I saw two writhing bodies on our marital bed. My wife Vanessa's legs wrapped around a man who definitely wasn't me. The diamond wedding ring I'd placed on her finger 6 years ago caught the moonlight as her hands gripped his back. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced in combat. Hey everyone, I'm Mason Alexander Crawford, 32 years old, and this is the story of how my wife's betrayal during my military deployment led to the most calculated revenge ever served cold. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end to see how justice was finally delivered. I was a Special Forces operator stationed in Afghanistan, serving my third tour of duty. My wife Vanessa and I had what I thought was an unbreakable bond. She was a successful real estate agent, and we had built our dream life in our Virginia Beach home. During my deployments, I never once doubted her faithfulness. I was fighting for our country, for our future, for her. But everything changed during that deployment in 2024. I'd taken shrapnel to my shoulder during an operation and was granted emergency leave. Instead of informing Vanessa, I decided to surprise her. After 16 hours of travel, I arrived home at 1:30 a.m., expecting to slip into bed beside my sleeping wife. The moment I opened our front door, I knew something was wrong. There was an unfamiliar leather jacket draped over our couch, expensive cologne hanging in the air, definitely not mine. As I crept up our stairs, my combat training kicked in. Silent, methodical movements learned through years of special operations. That's when I heard them. The passionate moans, the whispered words of desire, the rhythmic creaking of our bed. The same bed where we'd made love countless times, where we'd planned our future family. Through the partially open door, I watched as Xavier Kingston, a personal trainer from her gym, pleasured my wife in ways that burned themselves into my memory. The same gym membership I'd bought her before deploying, thinking it would help her cope with my absence. The irony wasn't lost on me. But I didn't burst in. 15 years of military training had taught me one thing. Intelligence gathering comes before action. I silently set up my phone to record, documented everything, and retreated to my truck. That night, as I sat there watching our bedroom window, something inside me changed. The loving husband died, and in his place, a man with a singular mission was born. What happened next would involve a private investigator, hidden cameras, bank records, and a plan so meticulous it would make military strategists proud. But here's where it gets interesting. Xavier wasn't just any personal trainer. He had secrets of his own, dark ones that would prove very, very useful to me. The next morning, I checked into a hotel and began my reconnaissance. What I uncovered in the following weeks would shock even the most hardened cynic. Vanessa and Xavier's affair was just the tip of a very dirty iceberg. Sometimes, people have no idea who they're really messing with. And my wife? She had no clue she was cheating on someone who specialized in destroying enemy operations for a living. But to understand how deep this betrayal went, and how exquisitely sweet revenge would taste, you'll need to hear what happened next. The morning after discovering my wife's infidelity, I did something that would make most men cringe. I went back home and pretended nothing had happened. Vanessa was in the kitchen making coffee, wearing her silk robe, completely unaware that just hours ago I had watched her betray our marriage in the most intimate way possible. "Baby," she exclaimed, running to hug me. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming home?" The warmth in her voice, the softness of her embrace, it was all so convincing. 6 years of marriage, and I never knew what an accomplished actress I'd wed. I hugged her back, fighting the urge to confront her, to demand answers. But my military training kicked in. Patience, strategy, precision. "Wanted to surprise you," I said, forcing a smile. "Shoulder took some shrapnel, but I'll be fine." Her eyes showed concern, but I couldn't help wondering if she was more worried about how my presence would affect her rendezvous with Xavier. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the devoted, unsuspecting husband perfectly. But while Vanessa thought I was attending physical therapy sessions, I was actually building my case. The private investigator I hired, Mike Reeves, was worth every penny. What he uncovered made my blood boil. Xavier Kingston wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was sleeping with 3 other married women whose husbands were deployed. It was his specialty, his sick little niche. He targeted military wives, used his position as a personal trainer to get close to them, and then moved in when their husbands shipped out. But that wasn't even the worst part. Remember those bank records I mentioned? Well, it turns out my darling wife had been helping herself to our joint savings account. Over $50,000 transferred to a separate account over the past 6 months. Money I'd earned on deployment, money meant for our future children's college fund, all gone. And guess what she spent it on? Luxury gifts for Xavier, designer watches, expensive weekend getaways, even a down payment for his new BMW. But here's where it gets really interesting. Mike discovered something about Xavier that would change everything. Before becoming a personal trainer, he'd been fired from his job as a financial advisor for embezzling client funds. He'd avoided jail time through a technicality, but the records were there, buried, but not forgotten. He'd also been paying off gambling debts to some very dangerous people. One afternoon, while Vanessa was showing houses, I broke into Xavier's apartment. What I found there shocked even me, and I'd seen some dark things in combat. Hidden in his closet was a box containing photos of all the military wives he'd seduced, including intimate pictures of my Vanessa. But more importantly, I found evidence of his current embezzlement scheme. He wasn't just a personal trainer. He was running a small Ponzi scheme, convincing wealthy gym members to invest in a fictional supplement company. That's when my revenge plan crystallized. Sun Tzu said, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." Well, I knew Xavier now, knew his weaknesses, his fears, his secrets. And I knew exactly how to destroy him. I set up cameras in our house, gathered text messages, documented the money transfers, and built an airtight case of their affair. But that was just the beginning. What I had planned would hit them where it really hurt. Their reputations, their careers, their futures. Remember those dangerous people Xavier owed money to? Well, let's just say I knew some people too. People who could make things happen. People who owed me favors from my time in Special Forces. The pieces were all in place. Now it was time to make my move. But what happened next would shock everyone, including Mike the PI. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies, it's about watching them destroy themselves. Want to hear how I executed my revenge plan? Trust me, this is where things get really interesting. You know what's funny about revenge? The best kind happens when your targets don't even realize they're being hunted until it's too late. That's exactly how I played it. First, I had Mike the PI contact several of Xavier's investment victims, revealing his supplement company scam. But here's the genius part. We didn't expose him directly. Instead, we planted seeds of doubt, making his investors start asking questions they should have asked months ago. The panic in Xavier's voice when he started getting calls about their investments was just the beginning. Meanwhile, I made an anonymous tip to his probation officer about potential financial fraud. Remember that previous embezzlement charge he'd dodged? Well, even the suspicion of new financial crimes would trigger a thorough investigation. The best part? He had no idea it was coming. But I wasn't done with Xavier yet. Those dangerous people he owed money to? I had my Special Forces contacts reach out to them, buying up Xavier's gambling debts. Now he owed the money to me, though he didn't know it yet. I also made sure his other conquests, those military wives he'd seduced, found out about each other. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Multiply that by 4. Now, for my dear wife Vanessa. Remember that separate account where she'd stashed the $50,000 she'd stolen from our joint savings? Well, being her husband had its advantages. I had our bank freeze the account under suspicion of fraud, but that was just the appetizer. I waited for the perfect moment to spring my trap. It came during one of the biggest real estate events of the year, the Virginia Beach Luxury Property Showcase. Vanessa was set to present her latest multi-million-dollar listing to potential buyers and fellow realtors. Her reputation as a top-selling agent was everything to her. The night before the showcase, I set everything in motion. First, I sent a detailed dossier to her real estate agency's ethics board, documenting how she'd been using open houses for her afternoon rendezvous with Xavier, complete with security camera footage from our home, bank statements showing her theft, and evidence of her helping Xavier scam his investment victims by vouching for his fake supplement company to her wealthy clients. But here's where my military training really came in handy. Timing is everything in combat, and it's everything in revenge too. Just as Vanessa was starting her presentation at the showcase, everything hit at once. Xavier was being arrested by his probation officer right in the middle of the gym where he worked. His investors were showing up demanding their money back. The wives he'd seduced were exposing him on social media. And the loan sharks, they were discovering that their debt had been bought by someone who knew exactly how to collect. Meanwhile, Vanessa's phone started blowing up. The ethics board emails, the frozen bank account notifications, the angry calls from clients who'd invested in Xavier's scam on her recommendation. But the coup de grace, that came from an unexpected source. Want to know how this all ends? Because let me tell you, the final part of this revenge story is something nobody saw coming. Remember how I said the final blow came from an unexpected source? Well, it turns out I wasn't the only one gathering intelligence. Mike, my PI, had discovered something even I didn't see coming. Vanessa was pregnant. With Xavier's baby. She'd been hiding it from both of us. As her presentation at the luxury showcase imploded with the ethics board accusations, I walked into that conference room. The look on her face when she saw me, priceless. But I wasn't alone. Behind me walked in someone who would change everything, Xavier's wife. Oh, did I forget to mention? Xavier was married too. His wife, Catherine, had been away caring for her sick mother in Seattle for the past year. She'd trusted him, supported his career change, even helped him start his personal training business. And now she stood there, 6 months pregnant herself, staring at the woman who'd been sleeping with her husband. The silence in that conference room was deafening. Real estate agents, potential buyers, and local media all witnessed what happened next. Catherine calmly walked up to the podium, took the microphone from my stunned wife, and proceeded to lay out every detail of Xavier's scams, both financial and romantic. Turns out Catherine wasn't just a housewife. She was a federal fraud investigator on maternity leave. Vanessa's face went from red to white as Catherine revealed the full scope of the federal investigation she'd been building against Xavier for months. My anonymous tip to his probation officer? It had given Catherine exactly the probable cause she needed to push her investigation forward. But here's the real twist. I stood up and addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, I'm Mason Crawford, Special Forces operator, and Vanessa's husband. Well, soon-to-be ex-husband. I played the video of Vanessa coaching Xavier on how to scam their investment victims. The footage wasn't just incriminating, it was felony-level conspiracy to commit fraud. Within hours, both Vanessa and Xavier were being led away in handcuffs. The charges? Conspiracy to commit fraud, theft, and investment scam charges that would keep them occupied for the next 5-10 years. Every penny they'd stolen would have to be paid back. Their careers? Destroyed. Their reputations? Shattered. Their futures? Gone. Catherine and I actually keep in touch now. 2 people burned by the ones we loved, both carrying the scars of betrayal. She gave birth to a beautiful baby girl 3 months ago. As for Vanessa's pregnancy, well, that turned out to be just another lie in her web of deception. You know what they say about karma? Sometimes she needs a little help, a little push in the right direction. My military training taught me to be patient, to gather intelligence, and to strike when the enemy least expects it. But life taught me something more valuable. The best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about justice. Last I heard, Xavier is serving his sentence in a federal prison, giving him plenty of time to think about his choices. Vanessa, she's in a minimum security facility, her real estate license revoked, her reputation in tatters. And me? I retired from the Special Forces and started a security consulting firm. Business is booming. They say living well is the best revenge. But I disagree. The best revenge is watching karma do her work while you sit back, knowing you helped serve justice to those who deserved it. And sometimes, just sometimes, that justice comes with a side of perfect timing and military precision. Remember, folks, be careful who you betray. You never know when that person might have the skills, patience, and resources to serve revenge on a cold, calculated platter.